explorers, and welcome to another video. We are still in the advent of Code Week, but of course when a Java release is out there, we need to cover it. So let's go through Java 22. So switch over to my screen here. Java 22, that's Streamlined Loading is my name for this one. It has a release date of 2024-03-19, so in March. So if we continue here to the next screen, the first JIP is 423, which is a region pinning for G1. So this is one of the garbage collectors, and region pinning is pretty much saying this part of the G1 should not be garbage collected. And why would you like to do that? Well, in this case, you have the problem when you are working with external code written in like C, Rust or so on, and you actually use this new API in order to talk to that part of the code. Currently, you turn off the garbage collector in order to ensure that you don't remove any references to that memory that you later need to free, which is not really a good choice. It's better to find a section where you can pin these resources and garbage collect everything else, and when you have completed the work with the C or Rust code, you can clean those resources out. So that's what this YEP is all about. Next up, we have statements before super, YEP 447. This is a preview, and the name says it all pretty much. When you have a super function in one of your classes, so it will run something in the parent of the class or whatever it inherits, and you want to put something above it. Maybe you want to do some kind of manipulation of the data before you send it to the super function and so on. Before you need it to wrap that in its own method or anything like that, but now you can actually run small things before the super function. Maybe you want to throw an exception if the value you send through is null or something. So this is a really good addition. You can't really add a bunch of code there, so that you will still have a limitation, but now you can add some code before the super call. Next up, we have the function and memory API. I've had a whole video about this subject, but it's still going on. And this is the final one, I believe. So in 22, it will be ratified and a part of the version, which is really nice. Now we have this feature, so we can actually call things and use resources outside of Java. Next up, we have unnamed variables and patterns. These are pretty much when you have to have a value somewhere or a variable somewhere, but you don't really care about that variable. That variable will never be used for anything, but you still need it. So let's give you a couple of examples. For instance, you need to fetch 3 different resources, but the third one you don't really care about that. And next we have number format exception. You don't really care about the particular exception. You just want to see that this is a bad number. Next up we have when we are case over a particular box, when you want to have different types. And then you don't really care about the inline element here. So these are really good additions. In some small cases I have these as well, where I don't want to give something a name. Next up we have YEP 457, and this is the Classfile API. And it's an API in order to write class files, read class files, execute class files, and so on. And this is for plugins and similar things. It's a good thing that they look into this. I have read through the specification, and I would say that it's a little bit low level at the moment. I would not use this API because I think it's a little bit kludgy, a little bit hard to use. I think they need to do some more work on this. Probably they will get a bunch of feedback on this and make a better API so it can actually be more useful. Currently it's writing like assembly or Java assembly code kind of operations and reading method calls and so on in a very kludgy way. So perhaps it will become better or not something that I can use. Next up, we have the Multifile source code programs loading 458. And I know that you have done this somewhere if you write Java code. You have written a Java function and then you want to have an extra class. So you write an extra class and loading that and getting it into Java and running it with a normal compiler, the normal executor is a hassle. Now you should be able to say Java and then say this is my folder where I have all my libraries, and then the actual class you want to run, it will find Java files, compile them and run them for you, so you don't really have to remember to compile things before you run it and so on. This is not for large Java programs where you actually need some kind of build process. This is more when you write smaller applications and trying things out. Then it's really good that it can find the Java resources, load them on the fly, and help you out to actually separate your concerns in different files. Next up, we have string templates. We have looked at these before. This is a second preview. They are working forward and process is going on, but it's really nice to have. These are the kind of things that you can do. You have some kind of variables, and then you create a template, and then you put values into that template. The same goes for this if you want to have more intricate things where you want to style them in a particular way and so on. But it's still going on, still work in progress. Next up, we have the Vector API 4.6.0, and this is the 7th incubator. And I think this is a really hard thing to solve. The Vector API is pretty much array multiplication, addition, and everything around that. And making that a really good API and making it really performant, so you pretty much could write anything in Java. You could write machine learning in Java perhaps with this Vector API. So getting this right is both tricky and very important. So that they take their time, fine. This is the 7th try, so they're still working on it. But it looks better and better for each iteration. Next up, we have JEP 4.6.1, Stream Gatherers. So what is this particular concept? Well, currently we have streams that have 3 different parts. You have something that will give the stream some values. Perhaps you have an array that you make into a stream. And then you have a couple of different things that manipulates the stream. Maybe you have a filter, you have a map, or some kind of functionality that will change the stream in some way. And then at the bottom you have a collector or gatherer that will pretty much kick off the stream and actually do the full process. So if you, let's say, have an array in, do a bunch of filters, and then you do a to list at the end, the to list is actually what running this process. But at the moment, there is no way to actually have, let's say, a window in the middle where you can compare two objects, or a way of removing all values that are not distinct or something like that. Adding that to a stream is very complicated today. So this is a way of gathering the stream somewhere in the flow and then do some operation and then continue again. So for instance, you could have a window in the middle where you compare two objects and then send one object through or something like that. So this is an interesting concept. It's still a preview, still a work in progress. Next up, we have 4.6.2, and this is structured concurrency. It is when you're writing a Java web service or similar where you need to gather multiple resources in different threads. Then you also want to fetch them back in a good way. So an example here could be that you have two suppliers here where you fork to run the fetching of a user and fetching of an order at the same time. Then you join that scope and then return the user and order data later on. So this is a way of making multiple calls in different threads and then joining the result back again. Next up, we have JEP 4.6.3, which is implicit declared classes and instant main methods. second preview. So this is for all your Kotlin folks where you don't want to write Kotlin and stay in that community. You want to get something back to the Java community, and you just want to write void main and then your code, and don't care about classes or anything else that makes the Java program really, really powerful. Then this is for you, not something that I need or use. Next up, we have scoped values 464, second preview. And this is, again, when you're writing these kind of applications that have a particular context, maybe a user visit a web server, something like that, and you want to keep some values in a global context, but still to that particular thread. So in this case, we have something that is thread local. We create an instance and then we will run the application. Then further down, we need to access the database, and we will use that principle down there. So this is a way of having something that follows a thread through, so you don't need to pass the value every time. And that is pretty much everything that will come in Java 22. I hope that you found it interesting. Is there any feature that you are really excited about? Leave a comment in the comment section down below. If you like this video, give it a like, share it with your friends and colleagues. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do that. And I really hope to see you in the next video.